Good evening, folks. Good day, good morning, depending on where you're listening to this and what time it is. Today we have Kat Taylor with us. Kat Taylor is active in a variety of social enterprises, public benefit, and philanthropic ventures. Concurrently, she serves as co-founder and board chair of Beneficial State Bank, a community development financial institution whose mission is to bring beneficial banking to under-resourced communities in an economically and environmentally sustainable manner. Taylor is also the owner of TomKat Ranch, a cattle ranch that uses environmentally beneficial practices and research to demonstrate, inspire, and teach the adoption of regenerative agriculture. Taylor serves and has served on many nonprofit boards, including Community Development Bankers Association, Curie Odyssey, EcoTrust, Good Samaritan Family Resource Center, the Harvard Board of Overseers, Insight Prison Project, KQED, ProPublica, and the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. Welcome, Kat.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to have you here today. How are
Thank you, Eldra. I was honored to be asked. Thank you personally for that.
Well, you're most welcome, and it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Number one, because of so many social justice projects that I am aware you are a part of, but number two, you have graciously taken interest in Inside Circle, and we have been benefactors of something you have going on, known as the Good Life Pledge. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the Good Life Pledge is a recognition that we won't achieve the beloved communities and regeneratively sustainable planet unless we shift assets, unless we reallocate wealth. So we had, my partner Tom Sire and I had taken the Giving Pledge, which is a commitment to give half your wealth away during your life, but we wanted to take that further. And so the Good Life Pledge, which we made up out of whole cloth, is a commitment to shift a third of the assets under our control into community ownership and control. So not reconstituting wealth somewhere else, but recognizing that it takes wealth to build wealth. And we have many frontline Black and brown communities from whom wealth was taken over centuries. So it's time to give it back, support them, and get out of the way of their community engagement, community visioned dreams and aspirations for the future.
That's a very noble cause, and it's a mouthful. So if you can articulate, what is it that inspires you to move in this way?
So it's a long arc of activity, and I don't mean to narrate my whole life, which would be dull. But my earliest memories were of what I call the civil rights funerals, the assassinations of Bobby Kennedy, JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the funerals that we watched on TV when I was about 5 to 10. TV was a new thing and people watched it together, and it was a very sober, somber sort of occasion. And I was just painfully aware that there was something deeply wrong in our country's origins. And that's why this was such a momentous passing, to lose that leadership. So fast forward, while I was getting my education, I met and married Tom Steyer. We started building a family and a hedge fund called Farallon that he ran for many decades. And we started in on traditional philanthropy, giving money to organizations on whose board our friends and family sat, and serving on boards ourselves and trying to, make some positive impact through philanthropy, but recognizing it didn't feel like enough. So after John Kerry was not elected president, we decided to get into operating roles in philanthropy, and we started several social enterprises: the bank, Beneficial State Bank, Beneficial State Bank Foundation, TomKat Ranch Educational Foundation, 2 venture funds, one of them still going, Radical Impact Partners, to see if we could actually drive greater change by changing from a system standpoint, the institutions that drive outcomes, and business and the economy drive more outcomes arguably than government and philanthropy. But still that wasn't enough. So we started engaging in policy, regulation, and legislative change, including criminal justice reform, climate regulations, all sorts of things. That wasn't enough. So then we got into politics. Tom literally ran for president to make sure that reparations, race, and climate were central to the presidential debate conversations. That wasn't enough. Came home, started thinking about philanthropic reform and the problematic tendency of philanthropy to reinforce white supremacy and wealth concentration. Philanthropic assets have grown dramatically over the last 30 years without there being much of an uptick in the total giving. And we see how a lot of foundations and philanthropies have vast wealth that's literally invested in the things that are killing us, like private prisons, extractive finance, and fossil fuels. So so most recent things we've done is to take the Good Life Pledge and develop real concrete ways to shift assets, both land, financial assets, philanthropic assets, to community control, and then also really engage in cultural strategy around narrative shift. So we resurrected a film company that's now called TomKat Media, and working with Anasa Troutman at the Big We Foundation and Marcella Davison at Chapultepec Media and others, Laura O'Connor, on trying to support narratives that reinforce programmatic work. So it's a full arc of activity, and it's time to shoot the moon. We have to win every hand, every suit. We have to do everything we possibly can. And the Good Life Pledge is one of the latest manifestations of that.
Wow. So you spoke a lot there, Kat, about the arc of your involvement and how things affected you in your life growing up, what you saw, the investments and ventures that you've been involved in up to this point that led to the Good Life Pledge. So in doing so, in talking about shooting the moon and winning every hand, what do you hope to accomplish?
I hope that we put more and different people in charge, that the world created artificial constructs like race and class and even criminal justice status. And it has led to a world that's wholly unsustainable because we haven't included everybody in our decisioning. And we've allowed our economy and business through some false allegiance to markets and, free markets and capitalism to get us to this horrible place of lack of liberation for many people and populations, desperation economically, social chaos, diaspora, and extreme degradation of our one home, our planet. And that doesn't seem to me to be the natural outcome of a society based on reciprocity and mutualism. It's an over-reliance on independence, hoarding, and competition. And so I hope that through all of this engagement, we activate the voices that have been unheard until now that can create that kind of world where we recognize we do better together than apart, and we eradicate desperation, which is expensive for all of us, and liberate everybody to live their fullest life. That's why we called the pledge the Good Life. Everyone deserves a good life.
Yeah, everyone deserves a good life. I like that, and I thoroughly believe in that. I was sitting in circle with some of the young folks across the country that we support, and something came up in the class yesterday around wealth. And we were speaking to a young man. He's 21 years old, recently released. He hasn't been back in the community for 18 months, and he's getting ready to purchase a Mercedes Benz. And I started talking, to the youngsters about traditionally what some of our people believe to be wealth as they chase status symbols. And so we're going to start, trying to engage them around what generational wealth is, what that definition is, and what it looks like, and how we begin to grow that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I do think extreme wealth is a fairly vacuous value proposition. It's something that people try to attain, but it isn't very satisfying, I don't believe, especially compared to true wealth, which is your health, being in community, getting to be in love, loving, being close to family. I think wealth can undermine a lot of those more long-lasting, fulfilling goals. And that's rich, no pun intended, for me to say as a person of great wealth, but we're trying to get it out into other hands as rapidly as we can. And I'll say, with regard to my own family, because we have 4 adult children and now a daughter-in-law and a grandson, we didn't want to burden them with wealth. Inheriting wealth and operations that your parents instigated is not having a blank canvas to paint your own painting over your lifetime. I love Mary Oliver's phrase, "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" You should be free to make it what you want it to be. And I hear that from more next gens of wealthy families, that they don't want to be burdened by their parents' wealth.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were speaking before we started recording about, what we do here at Inside Circle, and specifically what this podcast is. I'm certain that we could talk ad nauseum about, wealth and money and things like that most people, when they think about Kat Taylor, that's what they think about. Mm-hmm. A question that I have for you, because you just spoke about wealth, and some of the first things that you talked about were health. Yeah. And family. Yeah. And those sorts of things, really, really tug at my heart. So I would ask you, the person, Kat, what does for you, what does vulnerability look like?
Yeah. Normally when I do speaking presentations, I sing as an act of vulnerability, mm-hmm. because I think that's what brings closeness, and we're all vulnerable in some way. And mm-hmm. I want to just backtrack a little to say, I'm not against wealth. I actually think we should have universal basic assets, not just universal basic income, mm-hmm. because nobody should be desperate for themselves or their families. A motivation for the Good Life Pledge was actually recognizing that many communities are like a mother with starving children. If they have current income, they're going to use every penny of it to feed their kids. And why would anyone not do that? But they never can develop a savings account. So let's give them both current income and assets so that they can jump onto the kind of wealth where if everybody owns a little bit of everything and nobody owns too much of anything, then we'll all thrive. So, so it would be unfair of me to say like, oh, we're going to give all our wealth away and everything will be fine. We've already endowed our kids with, excellent education, which was made possible because we're people of privilege with means. They have excellent health care. They can afford to buy a house. These are all what I consider basic human rights that many people have no shot at right now. So as rapidly as we can get to a place where everybody's safe and can raise a family, that's the best thing for the world. So the health piece of it too, I take for granted my health, but the racialized disparities of health outcomes are egregious, just awful. When you look at infant mortality and health of pregnant mothers, Black women have terrible odds, and their babies too. Actually was just on a call with a remarkable woman who's discovered that we can basically restore the length of telomeres in your DNA such that you can rebalance free radicals and oxygens in your system and reverse some chronic lifelong health disorders that deeply affect Black and brown communities like diabetes, health disease, and others. So health is a big piece of that.
Mm. When I hear you speak about things like this, what comes up for me is transformation, transforming our culture, transforming our society, and making it possible to transform the lives of people and our future. There are our children, those who are to come after us. When you think about transformation, what comes up for you?
Well, I think it's reallocating power. I mean, I talk about reallocating wealth, and that means income, land, control, lots of things. But we have disempowered whole communities. And when we can find a way to shift power back to them, I believe that 7 billion heads are better than one. Like, people are assets and they have remarkable ideas and dreams and follow through. So transforming for me means being in community with, we, for instance, have been adopted, I'll say, by 5 communities, 7 in total. 2 of them are kind of leader communities and equitable community economic development. One of them is yours. And those communities we're very privileged to be a part of. And we want to see them lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown communities leading the way, women leading the way, non-gender conforming folks leading the way, the youth leading the way. And we'll just have a much bigger solution set if we open up access like that. Someone asked me the other day what community I belong to, and I was like, I think I belong to the one we're trying to dismantle.
And in that vein, the community that we are all a part of in some shape, form, or fashion that we're attempting to dismantle, is there a theme, a common theme that you run up against that is an impediment to this transformation and to this shift?
Yeah. So I've been talking a lot with women in philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't mean to be a genderist. I think men have amazing things to offer the world, and they are critical to our way forward. And I know a lot of women who behave more like men traditionally, and a lot of men who behave more like women. So having said that, I have this very amateur thesis that it's our biological imperative to get our genetic material into the next generation. That's what motivates all species to reproduce and to fight for their offspring and so on. So until recently, we've been governed more by the rule of force than the rule of law or consensus or culture, with great exceptions in the longstanding cultures of the world. But and it's been sort of a society driven by a sperm mentality. So if my genetic material is conveyed through sperm, I'm going to put as much of it out there as I can, and then I'm going to compete against all other entrants and try to cut them out of resources, if not outright kill them, so that I can get my sperm into the next generation. And it's sort of an individualistic, forceful way of me against the world. If I have an egg, however, I only have 1 or 2 of them at best. It takes a lot, because we're such a slow maturing species, to raise an offspring, a human offspring. So I'm going to need cooperation, coordination, collaboration, communication. Those are going to be the skills I need to hone in a strategy that's much more like the few for the many. And that is a different way, a different mindset of approaching life and our problems and our opportunities. So I'm very hopeful that we'll get out of that old mentality of individualism and competition and towards something that I call mutualism, probably a made up word, or a better word maybe is reciprocity.
Mutualism is not a bad word. If you made it up, we'll coin it here today, folks. Kat Taylor, say it again.
Mutualism.
Mutualism.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking to push. That's what we're looking to grow towards. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, Eldra, I always notice when you and I are in conversation with the larger community and everything, when you check in initially and we ask you how your day is going, you say, I am working hard to serve others. I am hoping to take care of others, to recognize their struggles and their ambitions and everything. And I think that's mutualism. Mm-hmm. It's, recognizing that we need each other and we need to help each other too.
Yeah. Recognizing we need each other, because what I've learned in my personal experience is that try as I might with the individualism, it doesn't work out. Yeah. It doesn't work for me. I know others are still trying it out, but it doesn't work out for me. And community and being there for others and allowing myself to allow others to be there for me has been successful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It has been successful. It feels good, and it contributes to my overall well-being and those that I'm in relationship with.
Mm-hmm. It speaks volumes. Just look at the work at Aspire and Inside Circle.
Yeah. So. What is your go-to self-care tool?
I wish were a little more evolved in this, because I, as my good friends in San Quentin know and address, I've had a fair amount of trauma in my own life, and I basically sort of run from it
Hmm.
as opposed to sitting in the fire with it.
Hmm.
So I, work hard, and I love to play sports, and I play the guitar, and I spend time with family. But sometimes you have to sit with yourself too. And so I'm very much looking forward to, as I have in San Quentin with Inside Prison Project, coming to Inside Circle, to be in circle with you, Eldra, and
Hmm.
carry on that work that's hard but very necessary.
Yeah, we definitely are looking to put that together. We're actually trying to schedule our first post-COVID in-person weekend,
Yeah,
and of course, love to have you there. And that sitting in the fire is so important.
yeah.
That getting to know self and going into the trauma and developing a new relationship with it is so important.
Hmm.
Not trying to make it go away, not trying to minimize it, but number one, acknowledging that it's there. And then number two, developing a new relationship with it so that it doesn't, quite have the same hold.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm on the journey, but I got a long way to go.
Well,
So,
that's a part of the human condition. We all as humans have quite a ways to go.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
What if you can name them, what are three things that you are proud of about yourself?
Oh, golly. I think I'm a pretty ordinary person, Eldra. I don't really traffic in pride. At every chance I get, I try to find my humility more than anything else. I just been given a huge amount of opportunity in my life. Starting from, my parents were super involved in community and society and set a good example. And they made sure I didn't want for good education and, safety and home and everything else. So, um, and there's a lot of kismet in my life. I've just gotten to meet the most extraordinary people and have access. That's a hallmark of privilege. So I just hope I use it to my fullest ability and shift power as much as I possibly can and learn from others. I've learned tremendous amount from the 7 communities.
Mhm.
And I might just mention them here in case you have a chance to check them out. Obviously, Inside Circle and the Aspire Project, but also Friendship House and the Village, which is going to be a treatment center and tribal space for American Indians and Native Alaskans in San Francisco. Unbeknownst to many, a lot of American Indians live in urban settings. Then Urban Tilth Cooperation Richmond in Richmond, California, which is an organization that runs a community-supported agriculture on a sliding scale on leased lands. They're going to buy their lands and start a chain of cooperatively owned healthy grocery stores in food deserts like Richmond suffers. And then Anasa Troutman, it's Doria Robinson at Urban Tilth, and Peter Bratt at Friendship House, who we mainly work with, along with Eldra. And then Anasa Troutman and the Big We Foundation at Claiborne Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, the last place that Martin Luther King spoke at, doing a large-scale redevelopment of an industrial area that was formerly a thriving Black community. And then Allensworth, California, the first Black community in California, which was a really wonderful community that was then attacked after Colonel Allensworth himself was assassinated. And now the Black leadership in that community is coming back with astounding economic redevelopment plans centered on regenerative agriculture and ecotourism. And that's a really interesting community too, because the Black leadership that protected that community for decades is now presiding over a community that's 95% Latinx. And they're finding their way together. So, and then our 2 mentor communities are Regenesis Project in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Harold Mitchell, which is a really standout success. They parlayed a $20,000 EPA grant into $300 million of capital investment for federally qualified health clinics and affordable housing, leased owned housing, aquaponics, Tiger Woods golf course, industry, PPA agreements and community solar assets. It's really, and right up there alongside them are Push Buffalo and Rawa, up in Buffalo, who've been creating community assets, including solar, land trusts, all sorts of things. So there's remarkable work going on in communities all over the United States and of course beyond. And our commitment in the Good Life Pledge is to recruit more resources for the 7 communities with whom we work, but also to partner with other communities. So I often speak with philanthropists who have their set of communities that adopted them. And I think reciprocation is going to be how we get this done, that we'll support their work and they'll support ours, and it'll ramify from there.
Nice, nice. Big ups to those 7 communities, and folks, as you listen to this, we will have links to all of those communities so that you can go and check them out and see the wonderful work that they're all doing around the country. Grassroots, boots on the ground, serving where the service needs to be. And what I will point back to, Kat, is 3 things that I heard you say. Humility.
Yeah.
I also heard the fact that you don't squander opportunities. You take advantage of opportunities as they're presented to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I watched you run from taking the moment and taking the opportunity to just celebrate yourself and just be in that moment. You quickly shifted to the 7 communities, and it's very admirable that goes to the humility. And I can't wait to get you in circle.
I told you.
Yeah, I can't wait to get you in circle. Yeah. We all got work to do.
Yeah.
If you can name it, what is a fear that you have today in this work, in your life, wherever? What's the greatest fear that you sit with as you move through life now?
I think it's, I don't mean to pivot away from the very good question, but I don't want to lose any opportunity for love.
Yeah.
Anywhere, in work, in personal, anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes I move a little too fast and loose over opportunities to love. So that's my fear is missing it. My goal is to capture and give and return and reciprocate love.
That's a big one. Thank you for sharing. If you had one thing that you could invite our listeners into today, what would that be?
I think it's to, notwithstanding whose community you feel a part of or whose community you want to enter, to make haste and be in community as quickly as you can. I think it's the road to salvation for all of our current problems. And it feeds the soul to be in community. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. So I'm going to ask you 2 more things. The first one that I'm going to ask you is to close your eyes and feel yourself ground in your seat. Feel your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath and follow the breath inside. And in your mind's eye, see 6-year-old Catherine Ann. And when you are holding her in your vision, what advice would you give her?
I think no matter what happens to you or others, keep your generosity of spirit.
Keep your generosity of spirit. That's a good piece to give her.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Do you follow that advice more often than not in your life today?
I try to. I really try to.
Yeah.
Maybe I could exercise a little more generosity of spirit towards myself and that 6-year-old. But yeah, it what goes around comes around. So
we'll keep working on it.
yeah.
We'll keep working on it. What's one last thing, if we haven't covered it today, that you would like our listeners to leave this session with?
So to make all this talk real, I want to just say how we're shifting assets, because that's a legitimate question by other people. It's like, yeah, that's a good intent, but how are you going to do it? So we've been lucky to work with a financial shop in Black and Brown led financial group in New York City called Obsidian Capital. And we're working with them in addition to providing grants to increase a community's ability to absorb capital and to do the planning and everything that's required. And we're also going to shift $1 million of donor advised fund assets, that's a charitable asset, to those community, each one of those communities, and recruit others so that they can collateralize, meaning pledge that asset. Like rich people use assets to pledge for cheap money. Well, we're going to let those communities do that. So they're nonprofit bond financings that require some assets, and that gets you 1% and 2% 20-year money, which is really helpful in developing equitable economic development kinds of activities. And so that will dedicate those assets to that. And then at the end of the hold period, which is usually about 10 years, we'll just give those assets outright so that the communities have their own philanthropic asset. And then we're also working very hard to rematriate land return, land back to Black and Brown communities from which it was taken. We have 1,800 acres in Pescadero at TomKat Ranch that we're starting to build the relationships we need to with the indigenous people of the region, with Black farmers, brown farmers, farm worker cooperatives, and see if we can't design a worker owned cooperative business that can take over the lands of TomKat Ranch. And then there's just outright giving financial assets so that communities, have equity, have wealth that they can use to build wealth at the individual firm and collective community level.
Well,
and we're inviting all sorts of other philanthropists to do the same thing. So if you're out there listening to this, love to chat.
Where can they reach you? Where can these philanthropists find you and reach you and get involved in what you got going on?
Sure. Well, there is a website for the Good Life Pledge. I think it's goodlifepledge.org, but we'll be sure to share the link. And then I'll just give you my email, which is short, ktaylor, KTAYLOR, at F as in Frank, AHRLLC.com, FAHRLLC.com. And love to hear from you. We learn from other philanthropists all the time about extraordinary transformative work that they're doing too.
Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely, an honor and a pleasure to have you here today, and I look forward to more in the future.
Thank you so much, Eldra. It's been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.